So what if the reason you just can't seem to lose weight has absolutely nothing to do with how much you're eating and like literally everything to do with a trillion starving tenants living inside your gut?
I mean, it's a completely different way to look at the human body, isn't it? We're so conditioned to think of ourselves in total isolation.
We really are.
Yeah.
And, usually when we talk about weight loss or starting a new diet or whatever, the entire conversation is just immediately framed around subtraction.
Right. It's always about what you have to lose.
Exactly. We look at our plates and ask, well, what are we cutting out today? Like, what are we denying ourselves this time?
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It is. It's this exhausting mindset of scarcity where we basically treat our bodies like they need to be disciplined or punished.
Which is incredibly refreshing to step away from, to be honest. That punitive approach to physical health, I mean, it rarely works long term anyway.
Right. So for you listening, here's our mission today. We've got this highly concentrated, laser-focused set of notes that we're unpacking on a single topic, which is gut-healthy foods for weight loss.
And when we say concentrated, the source material today is brief, but it acts almost like a foundational mantra.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a singular, really powerful thesis about the exact ecosystem you need to build for holistic weight management.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because instead of focusing on eating less, this deep dive is entirely about what you need to eat more of, like to actually feed an invisible workforce inside you.
And I think what makes this source material so compelling is how it perfectly synthesizes diet, biology, and lifestyle into one continuous loop.
Yes,
It
exactly.
isn't just handing us a random list of diet tips, you know? It's giving us a unified theory of internal ecology.
100%. But before we get into the actual mechanics of how weight loss is achieved through this method, we really have to look at the menu first.
Right, the specific food.
Yeah. The notes we're working from provide a very specific roster of gut-healthy foods. So we're looking at fiber-rich foods broadly, and then it specifically lists yogurt, kefir, fermented foods, beans, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains.
And, notice what's completely absent from that list.
Oh, right.
There's no mention of synthetic supplements, no extreme fasting protocols, no powdered meal replacements.
None of that, yeah.
It's focused entirely on whole, structurally complex foods. But, I mean, knowing these foods exist doesn't automatically explain why they're grouped together.
No, it doesn't. And that's exactly where I stumbled at first, honestly. Because we hear the word fiber thrown around constantly in health spaces
Oh, everywhere.
to the point where it almost like loses its meaning. But our source explicitly groups things like beans, fruits, and whole grains right alongside fermented foods, like yogurt and kefir.
Right, which don't seem related.
Not at all. On a standard dinner plate, beans and yogurt don't exactly make sense together. So why this exact combination?
Well, biologically, there are two halves of the same equation. What's fascinating here is how the text deliberately bridges two distinct categories to create a complete biological toolkit.
Okay, a toolkit.
Yeah, so you've got your fibrous plant materials like the beans, veggies, and grains.
Right.
And then you've got the cultured fermented foods, the yogurt and kefir. The source isn't presenting these as, random healthy snacks to just graze on.
Right, they aren't just isolated superfood.
Exactly. They serve a single unified purpose when they are brought together in the body.
I was trying to wrap my head around this pairing when I was reviewing the notes, and I kept thinking about a massive construction site.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So if you want to build a skyscraper, you can't just dump a bunch of steel and concrete on an empty lot and expect the building to magically appear, right?
Yeah, you just have a pile of junk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need the raw materials, obviously, and that's your beans, your fruits, your whole grains. But raw materials don't assemble themselves.
No, they don't.
You also need the specialized construction crew, and that's your yogurt, your kefir, your fermented foods. They bring the actual active workers to the site to do something with that steel and concrete.
It's a decent start for an analogy, but I would actually push back a little on the idea of a construction site.
Oh, why is that?
Well, because a construction site implies an end date, right?
Yeah.
Build a skyscraper, the workers go home, and you're done.
Oh, true. The project finishes.
Right. But what this text is describing isn't a temporary project. It's an ongoing ecological terraforming process.
Okay, fair point. So it's more of a permanent maintenance crew.
Exactly, a permanent maintenance crew. The fermented foods introduce the active cultures, the living workers into your system.
Right.
But if you just send a crew of workers into a barren environment without any lumber or steel, what happens? They're just going to stand around, starve, and eventually die off.
Wow, yeah. They have nothing to do.
Right. They need the raw materials, which are the complex, indigestible structures found in the fiber-rich foods, to actually survive and do their jobs.
So you really have to have both halves. Like the whole grains bring the materials and the kefir brings the workforce.
You do. The source is quietly outlining a really highly sophisticated symbiotic relationship here.
Yeah, it's not just eat this because it's good for you.
No, it's telling you that to achieve the wellness goals you want, you have to seed the environment with the right elements from fermented foods, and then you have to sustain that environment with the structural integrity of fiber.
One without the other just doesn't work.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the next massive realization in these notes. Because we've established this highly specific menu, but the real question is, who is actually eating it?
Yes, this is the core of it.
Because when you sit down to a bowl of beans or a glass of kefir, you naturally assume you're feeding yourself, you're putting it in your mouth. But here's where it gets really interesting.
It really does.
The source explicitly states that the purpose of these foods is to nourish beneficial gut bacteria.
Nourish beneficial gut bacteria. That is the exact phrasing from the text, and it's basically the hinge upon which this entire philosophy turns.
It totally changes how you view a meal. Like, I realized reading this that you really shouldn't think of yourself as a single, isolated organism anymore.
You're an ecosystem.
Exactly. You're more like a benevolent landlord for an apartment building that houses, trillions of tiny tenants.
Right.
So when you eat that bowl of whole grains, you aren't actually feeding yourself in the traditional sense. You're paying the rent. You're providing the utilities those tenants need to keep the building running smoothly.
I definitely see the appeal of the landlord analogy, but again, we have to look closer at the interdependence here.
Okay, push back on me again. Let's hear it.
Well, a human landlord can survive perfectly fine if their apartment building sits empty, right?
Oh, yeah. They just lose money, but they don't physically die.
Exactly. But you can't. If your internal building empties out, your health completely collapses. It's much more like a biological life support system.
Okay, yeah. The stakes are way higher than just real estate.
Far higher. So let's zero in on that specific word from the text. Nourish.
Right, because it doesn't just say feed.
Exactly. The source doesn't say these foods merely feed or interact with the bacteria. It says they nourish them.
And there's a big semantic difference there.
A huge difference. Nourishment implies an active, ongoing relationship of qualitative care.
Like you have a responsibility to them.
Yes. You can feed a dog junk food every day and keep it alive, but you aren't nourishing it. Nourishment implies providing the exact biological substances needed for optimal flourishing.
It's a very intentional word.
And it completely explains the WHY behind the menu we just discussed. These beneficial bacteria absolutely require these exact foods to survive.
They can't just live on, like, processed sugar and fast food.
No, they are highly specialized. If you stop providing the whole grains, the beans, the fermented foods, if you stop nourishing them, those specific beneficial tenants just can't survive.
And so if they die off, what happens?
Well, nature abhors a vacuum, as they say. The text specifically says beneficial gut bacteria, which directly implies the existence of non-beneficial ones.
Oh, right. The bad tenants.
Exactly. When the good bacteria starve because you've stopped eating fiber, the less beneficial inflammatory bacteria swoop in and take over the ecosystem.
Wow.
Without constant, deliberate nourishment from those specific inputs, your internal ecology shifts dramatically,
Yeah.
and usually not in your favor.
So basically, your primary job at every meal is to look at your plate and ask, is this going to keep my best workers alive?
That's it, entirely.
It's a complete paradigm shift. You are eating for an ecosystem.
That is the exact mental shift the source wants the reader to make.
Okay, but I have to push back here, or at least play devil's advocate for a second, because I know what you listening might be thinking right now.
Go for it.
Let's say I buy into this. I'm eating the fiber-rich foods, I'm eating the vegetables, I'm drinking the kefir. The beneficial bacteria are fully nourished, the ecosystem is thriving. Great.
Right.
But what is the actual return on investment for my physical body? The source explicitly states that nourishing these bacteria supports, quote, digestion, fullness, and overall wellness.
Yes. And those three words are incredibly potent when strung together like that. Digestion, fullness, and wellness.
They are. But hold on, if we're talking about eating heavy grains, beans, and cultured dairy, aren't we just adding a massive amount of dense food to our daily intake?
It can seem that way, yes.
Right. So how does adding heavy, complex foods translate specifically to the title of our deep dive? Weight loss. Because the traditional math we've all been taught says if you want to lose weight, you eat fewer calories.
Yeah.
You don't eat more beans.
Right, right.
So how does this math actually work in reality?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's exactly why this text is so disruptive.
Yeah, it breaks the old rules completely.
It does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the answer lies entirely in how we define the word fullness.
Okay.
This is where the source completely dismantles the traditional dieting paradigm you mentioned at the start of the show.
The whole calorie counting scarcity mindset thing.
Right. Traditional weight loss models rely on restriction. You eat less, your stomach empties faster, and the result is that you are just perpetually hungry.
And miserable.
And miserable. That hunger is a state of biological stress. Your brain is basically constantly screaming at you to find calories.
Yeah, you're white-knuckling your way through the afternoon, just trying not to eat a donut.
Exactly. Now, some people try to game the system, right? With that classic water trick.
Oh, where you drink a massive glass of water right before a meal.
Right, to stretch the stomach out and trick the brain to thinking it's physically full.
I think we've all tried that at some point. It lasts for about, 20 minutes? And then you're starving again.
Exactly, because it's a mechanical trick. It's not a biological signal.
Oh, that makes sense.
But our source introduces biological fullness as a core pillar of the actual weight loss process. So let's walk through the mechanics of that.
Okay, lay it out for us.
When you eat those complex, fiber-rich foods, they don't break down quickly in the upper GI tract. They travel all the way down into your gut, where your nourished beneficial bacteria get to work on them.
Okay, so the workforce is doing their jobs on the raw materials.
Yes. And as those bacteria ferment and process the fiber, they produce byproducts, specifically things called short-chain fatty acids.
Short-chain fatty acids.
Right. And these fatty acids actually interact with your gut lining and trigger the release of specific satiety hormones.
Wait, really? So it's not just bulk?
No, not at all. These hormones travel directly from your gut to your brain.
So it's an actual chemical text message?
Precisely. They are sending a chemical signal to your brain saying, hey, we have all the complex nutrients we need down here. We are actively processing them. You can shut off the hunger drive now.
Wow.
That is true, biological fullness.
That's incredible. So because you're genuinely deeply satiated on a chemical level, you naturally just stop over-consuming. You don't even have to try.
Exactly. Weight loss in this framework isn't achieved by, as you said, white-knuckling your way through hunger pangs or meticulously tracking every calorie on an app.
Right.
It's achieved as a natural, effortless byproduct of engineered biological fullness.
So to answer my own pushback from earlier, yes, beans and whole grains might be calorically dense, but because they initiate this massive satiety signal, you end up effortlessly eating less overall throughout the day.
Exactly. You don't have to fight your own body anymore.
It's a self-regulating system.
It really is. When the bacteria are nourished, they optimize digestion. Efficient digestion extracts the right nutrients and promotes that long-lasting fullness.
Which stops the snacking.
Right. That fullness naturally prevents the excess caloric consumption that usually derails people's diets. And it all falls under the umbrella of what the text calls overall wellness.
It just sounds so intuitive when you lay it out like that. Like, just eat the right structural foods, let the bacteria do the processing, feel genuinely full, and lose weight.
It's elegant.
Very elegant. But of course, our source material leaves us with a massive, absolutely essential caveat right at the very end of the text.
They usually do.
Yeah, it warns us that this system, as perfect and elegant as it sounds, doesn't work in a vacuum.
Because biology is always interconnected. You can't just isolate one system from the rest of the body.
Exactly. The notes explicitly say that all these incredible benefits, the nourishing of the bacteria, the efficient digestion, the biological fullness, they only occur, quote, alongside regular exercise and hydration.
Alongside. That's the critical operator in that sentence.
You know, I was trying to visualize how this fits in mechanically.
Yeah.
Because if fiber's the lumber and kefir's the workforce, what's the water doing?
Right.
And it struck me that fiber without water is essentially like swallowing a dry kitchen sponge.
Oh, wow. That's a very vivid and honestly very accurate analogy.
Right. If you swallow a completely dry sponge, it's just going to sit there. It's rigid, it's abrasive, and it's stuck.
Uncomfortable, to say the least.
Very. It doesn't matter how high quality or organic the sponge is. But the moment you introduce water, what happens?
It softens.
Yes, the sponge expands, it softens, it becomes pliable. Water is the thing that allows that structural fiber to actually sweep smoothly through the digestive tract.
This raises an important question for anyone trying to actually implement this lifestyle, though.
What's that?
What happens if you sit on your couch, completely sedentary, mildly dehydrated, and eat a theoretically perfect bowl of yogurt, beans, and fruit.
Oh, the dry sponge just sits there.
Exactly. The fiber has absolutely no water to absorb. Without hydration, you aren't lubricating the system,
Yeah.
and that heavy, complex food can actually lead to severe bloating or constipation.
Because it's just blocked up.
Right. You've introduced the raw materials, but you haven't provided the environment for them to move.
And what about the exercise component? Like, why does the text specifically pair hydration with regular exercise?
It comes down to something called digestive motility.
Okay, what is that?
Motility is the actual muscular contraction of your gut that physically moves food along the digestive tract.
Oh, like a conveyor belt.
Exactly. When you are completely sedentary, your metabolic rate drops. Blood flow to your digestive organs isn't optimized, and those muscular contractions just slow down.
So the workforce is there, the lumber is there, but the conveyor belt is totally broken.
Precisely. The source views the human body as a holistic machine. Hydration and regular exercise aren't just, good ideas to tack onto a diet if you have time.
Right, they aren't optional bonuses.
No, they are mandatory cofactors for this specific ecosystem to function. You need the water to physically soften and move the fiber, and you need the movement to stimulate the muscular contractions of the gut.
They're the non-negotiable catalysts.
Right.
The word alongside really is brilliant. It implies parallel action. It's not sequential.
Right.
Like you don't just eat well for a month and then decide, oh, maybe I'll start drinking water later.
Doesn't work that way.
No. You're walking a path. And on one side of you is this incredible fiber-rich, gut-healthy diet nourishing your microbiome.
Yeah.
And on the other side is your water bottle and your daily movement. They have to walk together at the exact same pace for you to reach that destination of weight loss and wellness.
If one stops, the other stops. The entire system just seizes up.
Man, this has been a really enlightening journey through what initially seemed like a very brief set of notes.
It's surprisingly deep once you get into the mechanics of it.
It really is. So let's recap this for you, the listener, so you can walk away with a solid synthesis of all this. We started by building a very specific plate, right?
We did.
We're talking about pairing fiber-rich foods, the beans, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, with fermented foods like yogurt and kefir.
Right, and we established that those specific foods shouldn't just be viewed as empty calories or macros, but as a biological toolkit.
A literal tool.
Yeah, they act as both the raw materials and the active workforce for your internal ecosystem.
Right. And you're eating that specific combination, not to satisfy your own immediate cravings, but to intentionally nourish the beneficial gut bacteria that live inside you.
Because you're the landlord.
Exactly. You are maintaining a life support system for trillions of highly specialized tenants.
And by taking on that responsibility, by nourishing them, you reap the physiological reward.
Return on investment.
Right. That nourishment allows the bacteria to process the fiber, which directly supports your digestion and creates a profound, chemically driven sense of fullness.
Which is the secret key to the whole thing.
It really is.
That biological fullness is what naturally drives the weight loss. You aren't forcing yourself to starve. You're just so deeply biologically satiated that you simply don't need to overeat. The math works out entirely on its own.
Effortlessly.
Yes. And finally, you have to activate that entire incredible process by giving the system what it needs to physically move. You have to do it alongside hydration and regular exercise.
It really is a masterclass in holistic health, honestly, compressed into a single undeniable truth. It just shifts the burden from sheer willpower to actual biological alignment.
I love that phrase, biological alignment. So for you listening, your actionable takeaway today is incredibly empowering. We aren't here to give you, another restrictive list of things you can't have.
No, we want to give you things to add.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the next time you're figuring out your meals for the week, you now understand the underlying mechanics of why certain foods matter. You know that putting beans and kefir in your grocery cart isn't just a generic, healthy choice. It's a highly strategic move to build an ecosystem.
It replaces the anxiety of diet culture with a real sense of informed purpose.
It really does. And when you sit down to eat that meal, you know exactly why you're pairing it with a tall glass of water and a plan to go for a walk afterward. You know how the machinery works now.
You've got the blueprint.
You do. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We started this deep dive by talking about the restriction and the sheer exhaustion of traditional dieting.
The subtraction mindset.
Right. But if the food on your plate is actually meant to nourish the bacteria inside you rather than just your own physical body, how does that reframe every single meal you choose to eat from today onward?
It changes everything.
It does. The next time you sit down with a plate of food, look at it and ask yourself, are you just eating for one, or are you responsible for feeding a whole ecosystem? Keep that in mind the next time you take a bite.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.